Hi everybody, so this is Thinker with you, and I set up some mood lighting. I am quite enjoying it. So today I wanted to talk about the INFJ Paradox, and for all of you who don't know what a paradox is, I will try to explain it. The definition itself is rather convoluted, so that is why I said try. A paradox, though, is a self-contradiction. It is very, it's a conflict. So externally, it would be like saying, I'm sitting here and I'm also sitting in the kitchen. And it's a statement that's completely illogical and irrational. How can I be in two places at once? I can't be in two places at once. So then there's this self-contradiction between being in one place and being in two places. And it creates this kind of cycle loop effect, right? One hurts the other, but it hurts the other, but it keeps going and going and going. So how does this paradox, right, apply to the INFJ? Or how can it be applied? So the INFJ's paradox stems from their self-contradictory functions, and particularly their NI and their FE. So for you guys who don't know, excuse me, introverts, they need to be alone to stimulate their minds. Either in the way that they stimulate their minds is very different for each person. So for an extrovert, though, it's the opposite of that. They feel understimulated when they're by themselves, and they need to be around other people. And I think just kind of out there, they might not have to be around other people and actually communicating with them, but they do need to be around other people or this external thing to feel that stimulation. So in an INFJ, their external stimulation, or the thing that they need to stimulate their introverted intuition, is extroverted feeling, right? So what does this mean? And how does it create a paradox? Well, FE is about taking in or assimilating this external emotion, and the INFJ can do this in a couple of ways. They can kind of substitute being around people for just taking in external emotion, and good ways to do that are maybe by listening to music or watching movies or anything that projects an emotional tone. So I think a good thing to do, though, is to compare this to their INTJ cousins. So both of them have this introverted intuition as their dominant function. The INFJ has extroverted feeling, and the INTJ has extroverted thinking. So for the INTJ, their extroverted thinking needs to take in, instead of external emotion, they need to take in kind of external facts. It's like comparing a fiction book to like a theoretical physics book. Like, they need to take in that theoretical physics book, those factual ideas to stimulate their NI. And that TE will also create, it might create them to argue when they're with people. And I don't mean argue, but they like to, bounce off of people very quickly. This in the extroverted thinking kind of way. Well, what if this? What if that? And they're just feeding their introverted intuition. So it's actually a very analytical thing that they're doing, and I think it's taken the wrong way in most INTJs. But anyway, so in INFJs, right, they have to take in this external emotion. And I don't think movies or music will ever fully satisfy the INFJ's hunger and that need for being around people. That is why INFJs are said to be the most, extroverted introverts. And the need for an introvert to take in other people's emotions to stimulate their mind is a paradox in itself, because they have to essentially be around people, and they're in this assimilation mode. They're just taking in, right, or projecting, whatever it is, and as soon as they're by themselves, INFJs just cut off this assimilation, and then they go just entirely into their heads and they're just in that NITI, connecting new information with everything else that they have in their head and that it makes them think of, and creating these subjective kind of individual systems of organization through their TI. So that's the INFJ paradox, is this NIFE struggle. They have to be around people to stimulate themselves, but then they have to be alone to connect everything that they just assimilated. And that gives a lot of answers as to why the INFJ will, or is known for withdrawing from people suddenly, even from their closest friends. So what happens though? What can happen from this NIFE paradox in the INFJ? Well, one, a good thing is that it allows them to, like I said before, make those connections, but it also allows them to, when they're making those connections in internal systems of organizations, they're connecting with themselves. That is the way INFJs connect to themselves. And that sounds very odd, but that's just how it is. And that is why INFJs are very analytical on the inside, and we're not just this big ball of emotion. I don't know. But so it can help INFJs, feel more connected to themselves than, comparatively always exhausted from being around people and never really knowing how they feel, and just that idea of always going through it, but they need that alone time to reflect and to be extremely introspective. They need that time. So that's a good thing that can happen from this INFJ paradox, is that it will force them into being by themselves. Force is like a really harsh word. It inspires them or drives them to be by themselves. A bad thing, though, a con, is this paradox can create that NITI loop. So what happens if the INFJ spends too much time alone? They go into this NITI loop, and that starts to, they start to theoretically breaking down these connections, and I think they kind of mistake that for extroverted feeling. But I will answer more or explain more of how that paradox affects that NITI loop, or what are the effects of it. So I hope everybody found this video useful. As always, you guys know what to do. Please comment below and ask some questions. I love questions. Nope, that's an idea saved for another time though. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys very soon. Until then,